Ladies and gentlemen, Marion Blair here. First thing I want to mention is the testing on my Peak Platinum. Haven't come to a conclusion on that. Still testing, still getting data. Not using my truck enough to really get some good stuff, but I'm getting it. And I have some, but I haven't looked at it, to be honest. I'm seeing something interesting on that last regen. It was very short, not much of a regen at all. Not sure if that's just a fluke or it has something to do with the platinum. So I need to kind of, explore that some more and find out. It's going to take months before I can get this figured out, because I'm not using my truck that much. I'm living in Houston. My wife had a stem cell transplant, and I'm kind of back and forth a little bit. But anyway, we're going to get to it. The other thing I wanted to mention was the idling that I covered last video. There's some things I missed on that I wanted to mention, and one of the commenters reminded me of this, and that's the high idling feature. Now that's a very important thing to use and to know about if you're going to have to idle. And hey, I get it. You got your pup in the truck or your wife, and you got to go in, do something. I mentioned Home Depot. Well, okay, Home Depot, and you have to idle. You want to keep the AC on. Well, you're either gonna have to idle, or you're gonna either piss off your wife or kill your dog, one of the two. And so yeah, sometimes you just have to idle. I've had to do it also. Crank that high idle up. You're gonna use a little more fuel, but it's gonna be minimal. It does increase your exhaust temperature some. And I think it will probably help from the wet stacking that we talked about, which is when your cylinders cool down to the point, your cylinder head temperature cools down to the point where you just start getting blow-by. And the oil gets contaminated, your rings start getting contaminated, this varnish starts building up, and all those bad things happen. Now, I haven't seen that, but I haven't done a whole lot of idling, to be honest with you, and at high idling. But I haven't seen that temperature increase that much when I kick that idle up. But it could be different in the cylinder, and I'm sure it probably is, and it won't hurt to do it. So I highly recommend high idling if you're gonna idle for any period of time. Because I can tell you this, if you don't, I've seen that exhaust temperature behind the turbo go down to under 300 degrees, 200 something degrees. That's too cold. So you don't want to do that. One of the things I've done in traffic, where you're just stuck in this, this traffic, which is very common here on I-10, and you inching forward, you can't really put it in neutral, you can't really use the high idle. I've put my foot on the brake and just idle it up a little bit that way. And you'd be surprised how that'll increase your exhaust temperature. Yeah, it might raise your temperature 1 degree, your transmission temperature 1 degree. It's not going to hurt it. I've watched my transmission temperature when I'm doing that, and these things really have some good transmission cooling, let me tell you. The other thing I wanted to mention was warm-up. How much warm-up do you want to do? Not much if you got the right oil in your truck. Down here in the south, and I'm no expert on the north, and a lot of you guys could teach me a lot about cold weather driving and these trucks and stuff. And you're using the low viscosity stuff, the 5W40. And that's pretty good stuff for real cold weather. But you don't want to just sit there and idle a truck to warm it up. Now your EGR, if we can say anything good about the EGR, it does help warm these trucks up faster. They actually, for having 3 gallons of oil, they warm up pretty good. But having said that, you don't want to just sit there and idle, because that's the hardest way to warm up a truck, the longest way to warm up a truck, I should say. You want to crank it, you want to let oil get to the top of the engine, you want it to, start everything running good and it idles good and all that, and then take off. There's one thing that kills me, and I've seen people do it over and over and over, kind of a show-off thing. And it's only for the deleted guys, because they're the only ones that's got trucks that sound worth a shit, let's face it. And but they'll rev that truck up, rev it up. You can hear that turbine, you can hear that engine, man, it sounds great. And then they'll flip the ignition off. Well, your turbine is spinning. It's spinning without oil now. There's no oil pump going through the turbine. So you always want that turbine to be at idle before you shut your truck down. So that's just one thing. But yeah, I'm jealous about you deleted guys. I'm not knocking you. I'm just saying, don't do that. And I've got a friend that I saw doing that, and I cringed when I saw him do that. Another thing is I used to work offshore, and at the time I was working 7 and 7, and I've worked all these different rotation hitches. But I'd see these guys come in, and we get off the helicopter, go to the parking lot to get in our trucks. I had a 95 Ram at that time. And I'd see these guys jump in their truck, crank it, and immediately throw it in drive. Immediately. And you don't want to do that. Now, you know, if you've been running it and you're just going in and out of stores and stuff, yeah, that's not a big deal. You've still got plenty of oil. But if that truck's been sitting there for a week or so, or longer, you don't want to just crank it up and take off, you know, and you do want to let it idle a little bit and get that oil circulating around those, the cam, the top of the engine, the valves, and all that kind of stuff. As to when is it warm enough to take off? Well, pretty much right away. As soon as you know, like I say, cold weather, you're going to want to idle a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. Enough to get things circulated, the engine, if it's kind of stumbling and stuff, you know, let it smooth out and that sort of thing. But your truck's going to warm up faster if you drive off at a moderate speed. I'm not talking about getting on the freeway and, you know, particularly if you got a load, you want to really be more careful. You want the heat to distribute throughout the engine evenly, not, you know, quickly and have one part hotter or colder than the other. But as to what temperature, well, watch your oil temperature really. That's the key. You'll see your coolant temperature come up really fast. But that doesn't necessarily mean much. I mean, they tie together, oil and coolant, but your oil temperature is what really you want to watch when you're warming up. And what temperature can you say, okay, I'm ready to hit the freeway with my camper, full load, hammer down, 110 degrees. If you've got 110 degrees of oil temperature, you can pretty much do what you want. So if you guys think of anything that I've missed, let me know, guys. I like making these videos. It's a little difficult here, you know, being in Houston and not having my truck all the time and stuff. I've got it today though, and hopefully within a month we'll be back to normal. I'll probably want to do a coolant change at that point. I don't know. We'll see how things go. My life is really in flux right now, but I appreciate you guys hanging with me and watching my videos. And until next time, adios.